This is a true story from my life, and telling it still makes my stomach tighten. I was 21, a junior at Georgia State in Atlanta, when my family and my future conspired to see what I was made of. The lipstick smeared across the inside of a hoodie on my couch wasn't mine, and while my fingers were still pinching the stained fabric, my cracked iPhone buzzed on the dorm desk with a notification. "Your new line of credit is approved." It had my name on it. My stepbrother Drew had used my identity, and my boyfriend Ethan's location ping showed he was at the Hyatt Regency on Peachtree, exactly the hotel the rideshare receipt in our trash was from, time-stamped 20 minutes after he told me he was stuck in the library. My roommate Maya was staring at me, Ethan's hoodie, a lipstick smear like a signature, the phone vibrating against my notebook, the notification flashing my name like a taunt. The room smelled like vanilla body spray that wasn't mine. I could feel the humiliation crawling up my neck, hot and prickly, as if the whole city could see me through the tiny dorm window. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel, tell us where you're from, and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. I live on Piedmont, between a Starbucks that saved my grades and a MARTA stop that always made me late. My world then was lecture halls that smelled like old carpet and whiteboard marker, a part-time shift at a coffee shop on Auburn Ave, and a boyfriend I'd followed into too many stupid parties. I was the one who made study guides, booked group study rooms, remembered to bring snacks to everyone's late-night cram, the girl who kept life from fraying at the edges. And I had a stepbrother, Drew, 2 years older, bracelet of braided leather he bought at Pond City Market, like he was the kind of man who had hobbies. I never trusted him fully. He always talked in sales voice even at dinner. But he was family, since my mom married his dad, and that kind of obligation runs deep. The first time I smelled that vanilla perfume in our place, Ethan laughed it off. "Maya's friend came over," he'd said, a smirk barely tucked into the fold of his cheek. "Relax." The second time, the hoodie showed up on the arm of our blue IKEA couch, the lipstick mark blooming like a stain in a photograph. The buzzy credit notice arrived at the exact wrong second, the way life does its worst work in clusters. When Ethan lies, he looks tired. He's never creative with it. "Babe, it's just the team," he'll say, like his fraternity brothers at their Edgewood house are a singular alibi. That night, I watched his little blue dot drift downtown, then settle at the Hyatt. He told me he was in the library. My phone reflected my face in the black glass while I tapped between the dot on Find My and the bank app that had just told me I owed money I hadn't spent. I felt like a paper someone had poured water over, my edges buckling. "Okay," Maya said finally, chin propped on her palm, eyes too wide. "Pick one fire. We can't put them all out at once. Boyfriend or bank?" "Both," I whispered, and surprised myself with it. The word left my mouth clean, steady. I put the hoodie in a clear trash bag, knotted it, placed it in a plastic storage bin beneath my bed, like it was evidence, because it was. My brain had already started stacking facts into a wall I could lean my back against when everything else tilted. Rideshare receipt in the trash with the same timestamp as Ethan's library text, lipstick on his hoodie, my phone alert, a new credit line at a fintech I'd never heard of, but Drew talked about like it was the second coming. Drew, who knew my social, because he'd sat at our kitchen table 2 summers back and helped Mom and me with FAFSA forms. I walked to the window and looked down at the street, the cut of headlights, the way people didn't look up at your problems. Then I took a breath and sat down. Step 1, pull the credit report. I logged into annual credit report, held my breath while the page loaded, and there it was, a shiny new account at a buy now pay later app called Klim, approved that day, my name misspelled the exact way Drew always teased me about, like a little joke only he would make. Address matched. Email was mine. The phone number wasn't. The listed IP address was an Atlanta area one, but I didn't have the last digits to match to a device. Yet. "Freeze it," Maya said over my shoulder. "Freeze everything." I placed fraud alerts, froze my credit with Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. I took screenshots, exported PDFs, saved them to a folder called January Evidence. My hands stopped shaking once I was in action. Step 2, locate Ethan. I texted him. You in the library? Need you to pick up coffee. The read receipt rolled across the top of our conversation. No reply. Then I called the Hyatt Regency and asked to be connected to the room under Ethan R., State University Athletics. I heard myself say it politely, like I was someone who routinely called hotels to transfer to a boyfriend's room. The operator patched me through. It rang. A woman answered, voice bright and pinched. Hello? Then the line clicked dead. My face burned. Maya's eyebrows pulled together like two black birds. She took my phone, put it on the desk, and said, Okay, we're going to do this right. The next morning I clocked in at the copy shop and spent the slow hours between customers printing, hole punching, and filing the first pieces of what would become a mild-mannered nuclear weapon. The copier's hum became a metronome for my anger. Hotel folios, ride-share receipts, bank alerts, screenshots, a still from our Ring camera at Mom's house showing Drew leaning under the mailbox flap in the summer. He'd claimed he was fixing the hinge. I went back through old group chats for jokes about hacking FAFSA, found one of Drew's texts. Sis is the organized one. I just copy-paste her info, LOL. Gross. By dusk, I had a binder with tab dividers. The front pocket held the hoodie in a Ziploc. The first tab said, Ethan, infidelity, because if I was going to burn my life down to rebuild it right, I wasn't going to let him wander out of the blast radius. The second tab read, Drew, fraud. The third, policies, because I've learned people only pay attention when you relay their own rules back to them. Ethan texted at 9:17 p.m. Phone died, fell asleep. You mad? I stared at the words, their lightweight arrogance, and wrote back, Need to talk tomorrow, 11 a.m., Starbucks by Campus Green. He sent a thumbs up, like this was a calendar invite for a hike. Drew made his move next. He FaceTimed me at midnight, screen too close to his face. Hey, superstar. He always called me that when he felt small. His hair was too perfect for bedtime. He'd just rolled in from a bar. I could tell by the glaze over his eyes. You open a Klim account in my name? I asked calmly, binder on my lap like a blank-faced jury. Drew's mouth did what a cornered animal's does. Still, then the lips peeled back from his teeth. Excuse me? Why would I do that? Those apps are trash. Also, I have a job. At Standard Health Data, yeah, I said. Midtown, Code of Conduct Section 4, Integrity, I believe. I didn't actually know which number, but Drew straightened anyway, like the words themselves were a switchblade. He laughed, then stage whispered, Sweetie, don't throw around terms you don't understand. You know identity theft is a serious accusation, right? People get sued for that kind of slander. Reset your passwords. Stop writing your social on sticky notes. You're the only person who's had my files besides Mom, I said, and held up my phone so he could see the Ring camera still frozen on his summer mailbox. Repair. His pupils tightened. We'll talk soon, I said, and ended the call before he could slide into his favorite mode, talking me to sleep with confident nonsense. I didn't sleep much that night. I listened to the couple upstairs argue, an ambulance cut down Cortlandt Street, a drunk group laugh under our window at 2 a.m, someone kick a can into the curb. Atlanta sings even when you want silence. At dawn, I sat in our living room and wrote the bones of a plan. If Drew wanted to weaponize confidence, I would weaponize compliance. If Ethan wanted to be protected by popularity, I would crawl into the codes and bylaws that made his life possible and flip the switches. Starbucks, 10:55 a.m., smell of espresso and bleach, too loud milk steamer. Ethan arrived in the navy hoodie. Yes, that hoodie. But he'd washed it since yesterday. He gave me a hug that I let land on my shoulders like a coat and wasn't going to keep and sat down across from me. He started talking. Last night was a team meeting. Kyle's cousin was in town. We crashed at the Hyatt because his cousin had a free suite. I slid the rideshare receipt across the table. A barista called venti iced caramel, and someone whooped, and Ethan kept trying to make eye contact with the version of me who used to forgive the way people pick a scab. I was not that girl anymore. "You're lying," I said, voice steady, my hands flat on the table like I was balancing a cutting board. "And not well," the room answered when I called. A woman answered. "You called a hotel?" he said, and laughed like an audience had asked for improv. "Babe, that's insane." He leaned back and put his hands behind his head, so his biceps pressed against the cotton of his sleeve. The move made me sad. How rehearsed he was, even in the posture of casualness. "You're the fraternity vice president," I said. "Your internship at Lumea Ventures depends on you being a moral leader, right? You love that phrase. You wore it like a varsity letter." I opened the binder to Ethan, Infidelity, and slid the tab toward him, then shut it without letting him see inside, because this wasn't confession, it was court. He folded in. "Are you seriously doing this in public?" "Yes," I said, "because I know you, and I know you'll try to turn this into a secret I'm supposed to keep to protect your future." "My future has been in service of yours for 2 years. That ends today. I'm returning your key. You can pick up your stuff from Maya if you text her to arrange a time. Do not step foot inside the apartment." He stared. The room shifted focus. Steam hiss, an espresso knockbox thunk, the syrup pump clack. "You're overreacting," he said finally. "Actually," I said, and let my mouth curve in a smile that didn't feel sweet. "I'm just starting." The next 48 hours were a scavenger hunt for truth. I visited the Hyatt after my shift and asked politely if a manager could confirm whether a Kyle R. had a suite last night. I wore my work polo and said I'd left an earring there. The manager couldn't give me the name, but he did print a folio for R at K with a charge for an extra key at 1:14 a.m. I circled the timestamp and tucked it behind the Ethan tab. I pulled my lease and highlighted the clause about unapproved guests and overnight stays. Our management company, Grant & Court, loves enforcing small print when it benefits them. I filed a copy just in case. I texted a friend on the student conduct board and asked vague questions about fraternities and codes. She told me the words to look up: risk management, standards board, judicial process. And for Drew, I went to Mom's, where the Ring camera still ran above the porch like a small glass eye. Mom made me tea and told me she hated how I looked when I didn't sleep, her mouth pinched with worry. When I said, "I think Drew opened a line of credit in my name," she put her mug down too carefully. "He wouldn't," she whispered, building the sentence one frightened brick at a time. I didn't argue. I took the Ring camera micro SD card out and slid in a new one, kissed her cheek, and took the elevator down with the old card, the stairwell stinking faintly of bleach and cigarette smoke. In my backpack, the card, copies of the Klim approval, screenshots of Drew's lol-fafsa joke, a yellow legal pad with bullets about how Standard Health Data's code of conduct likely handled conflicts and fraud. Drew had posted a photo from their holiday party under a brushed steel sign that said, "Integrity lives here," which was funny if you didn't count my credit report. I needed someone who spoke policy like a native language. I found him in the financial aid office at GSU, a man with a bow tie and a patience that felt like Sunday church. I told him carefully that a family member might have misused my information. He gave me a checklist for identity theft victims, words that felt heavy but clarifying: police report, FTC identity theft affidavit, creditor dispute letters. He told me I was doing the right thing. Then he asked me to write my name on a form that said I'd received counseling, and I did, my hand steady. I went to the campus police and filed the report. The officer, young, gentle, took my statement and scanned in the Klim paperwork. He used words like case number and follow-up and "will contact you," and I believed him in the way you believe an umbrella might help in a hurricane. but I walked out holding a copy of a report with my name and identity theft printed on it, and that piece of paper was a kind of talisman the rest of the world understood. On my bus ride back, I drafted an email to ethicsofstandardhealthdata.com. I did not send it yet. I was assembling. I wanted no assumptions, only receipts. At my kitchen table that night, I opened the ring footage. There he was, Drew, in July, in a Braves cap, lifting the mailbox lid. He slid his hand in, fingertips pinching the darkness. Later, another clip. Him carrying a stack of envelopes inside, one of them with my name in that exact spidery pre-printed font credit bureaus use. I captured stills, labeled them with timestamps, and printed them. I backed everything up to 2 separate thumb drives I bought at the CVS on Spring Street. Ethan's counterattack came in group form, like I knew it would. His fraternity brothers posted photos from a team brunch and tagged Ethan between 2 girls with glitter on their cheeks. One of the girls, the same voice from the Hyatt room, posted a boomerang of clinking mimosas and tagged "on leaders." My stomach did a slow roll, but I didn't respond. I just added screenshots to the binder and wrote the chgandas, words, standards board, in block letters on a sticky note. What I didn't plan for was Drew showing up in person. He knocked at 11 p.m., loud enough to make the door vibrate. Maya looked at me. I shook my head. He knocked again, then texted, "Open the door or I'll have the landlord do it." I rolled my eyes and opened the door because if this was going to end, it needed to end in daylight, figuratively speaking. He stood there in a suit, tie loosened, eyes glassy. The hallway smelled like spilled beer and someone's late-night biblical amount of chicken nuggets. Drew smiled like I'd asked him to. "We're not doing this here," I said. He stepped in anyway, his cologne a citrus bullet. "You have something of mine," he said, scanning the room and landing on the binder as if drawn by magnet. "It's mine," I said. "It's my life." He did that fake laugh again. "You don't get it. You don't understand how things work. I was just smoothing something so you could get approved for a better phone plan, and—" I held up the police report. "Say that again, please," I said. "Cleaner. For the recorder." His mouth snapped shut. He looked at Maya like she might help him. She sat stone still, a witness with a steel core. "You think Standard Health cares about your college kid drama?" he spat finally. "We sell to hospital systems. We make good money. We're not going to stop because you're mad you can't budget." "I'm not going to argue morality with you," I said softly. "I'm going to argue policy. Your code of conduct, since you like big words, requires reporting conflicts of interest and any fraud involving personal data. That includes family. Your HIPAA training probably has a module on safeguarding PHI and PII, and I'm guessing HR might consider identity theft by an employee an issue of trust. And your boss has a LinkedIn post pinned about integrity, which means he'll want to make an example of someone eventually. Timing is everything." Drew smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes this time. "You're small time, kid," he said. "You don't know who I know." "I know your Slack username," I said, and enjoyed the surprise that flickered across his face like a film burn. "You used it to send Mom a PDF of my FAFSA form, and the metadata still says uploaded by Drew.Tanner. Don't worry, I've saved it." He took a step toward me. Maya stood up. It all stilled for a second, like the elevator in our building when it reaches each floor, that quiet pause before it opens. Drew dropped his hands, shook his head like a dog leaving a lake, and left. After the door closed, Maya let out a breath that sounded like the end of a race. "You're terrifying," she said, and hugged me so hard my bones squeaked. The next day, I took the binder to my campus job and scanned the whole thing into a single PDF with a table of contents. I opened a new doc and wrote in clear, spare sentences, "To Standard Health Data, Ethics and Compliance." I told the story without drama. I included my police report number, my FTC affidavit's confirmation code, the screenshots of the Ring camera, the credit report with the Klim account, the FAFSA PDF metadata. I cited sections of Standard Health's published code, they were public on their website, and attached copies. I ended with, I am not seeking compensation, I am seeking integrity in a company that claims to value it. I scheduled the email for Monday at 8:01 a.m. Then I got to work on Ethan. Maya and I ordered a sheet cake from a bakery on Edgewood with Happy Standards board, written in blue icing and sprinkles like confetti. We booked a small room in the student union under leadership debrief. I wrote a mock agenda that was just announcements, recognition, video presentation. I pulled video. The Hyatt manager had given me just enough and blended it with the boomerang, the rideshare receipt, screenshots of Ethan's texts saying library, while his location perched like a flag on the Hyatt pin. I wrote a simple opening slide. Integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one is watching, but someone is always watching. I invited the fraternity president, 2 Standards board members, and Ethan to celebrate our work on the food drive. It wasn't entirely a lie. They'd done a canned goods thing and posted about it like they'd invented charity. The room smelled like detergent, the fluorescent lights humming. At 6 p.m., Ethan came in wearing a white button-down, sleeves rolled up exactly 2 folds. "What's this?" he said, fake charmed, scanning for an ambush. He saw the cake and smiled. "Thanks for coming," I said. My hands didn't shake. I had learned something about myself in the last week. Once I had the truth laminated, I wasn't scared. The Standards Board president sat, expression polite. "We have another meeting at 7, he said. "This won't take long," I said, and pressed play. The first slide hung in the air longer than necessary. Then the boomerang, glasses clink, Ethan's face reflected in the bottom of a hotel flute, the rideshare receipt with a timestamp, the Hyatt extra key line, the text that said library, the location dot, no narration, no monologue, just facts arranged like dominoes finally given permission to fall. Ethan stood up halfway through. "This is insane," he said. "You can't, this is a violation." "Of what?" I said, tilting my head. "Your right to plagiarize our relationship? Sit down." My voice surprised even me, flat, cool. The Standards Board president, who had a habit of rubbing his forehead when he was thinking, rubbed his forehead. "Ethan, we'll talk about this," he said, not looking at me, because in their minds, women start problems even when they simply present them. "We're already talking," I said. "I'll be filing a formal complaint about misuse of chapter funds for the suite." Ethan flinched. "And for violating your risk management policy by having unregistered social events that end in overnight stays with, guests while representing the fraternity." I slid an envelope across the table with the complaint already written, copies of documentation labeled with tabs like I was handing over a grant proposal. "Also, I've CC'd Lumea Ventures HR with the video reel. They like leaders, remember? Here's leadership. Accountability." Ethan stared at me with pure hatred then, like I had stolen a future he wasn't going to build, but liked to keep in his pocket. The Standards Board president cleared his throat. "We'll be in touch," he said, as if email could unspill this. I walked out into the winter dark and felt the air press cool against my face. I felt clean. But the real fuse was still burning toward Monday morning, 8:01 a.m., when Standard Health would arrive to the label I'd printed on my email like a fine envelope. Integrity concern, identity theft by sales engineer Drew Tanner. I slept 3 hours, dreamless and flat as paper, and woke before my alarm. At 8:04 I had a reply. "Thank you for your submission. We take all ethics concerns seriously and will follow up." Form language, but it was the reply after that, 9:12 a.m., that tasted like electricity. "We would like to schedule a call to discuss the documentation you provided. Are you available today?" The sender's title, Director, Ethics and Compliance. At 9:30 a.m., I sat at my desk, binder to my left, Phone on speaker, Maya perched on the bed like a small, fierce judge. "Ms. Reyes," the director said. I loved the Ms. like a crown. "We appreciate how organized your submission is. I want to confirm a few details. The ring footage is from your mother's residence?" "Yes." "And the credit account was opened on date?" "Yes." "Have you filed a police report?" "Yes. Case number, I read it, and an FTC affidavit." There was a pause, paper shuffling. "We have a code of conduct. As you noted, it requires disclosure of personal conflicts that impact our trust obligations. Identity theft by an employee, if proven, would be considered a serious violation. We'll investigate promptly." I thanked her because it felt like a ceremony, and then I did something I hadn't let myself do. I cried silently, 2 tears landing on the cartoony panther on my GSU t-shirt. Not because justice was guaranteed, but because the machine had moved from "we'll see" to "we're looking." In the quiet after the call, I realized that I had no desire to punish, to feel powerful. I wanted the right thing to be done because the wrong thing had happened to me, and I had evidence, and that combination should matter in a world worth living in. By Thursday, the fraternity had suspended Ethan from his leadership position pending investigation. His internship sent him a perfunctory "we're reevaluating" email that he pretended not to get. He posted a story of his AirPods case captioned "Focus," and I laughed out loud in my quiet kitchen. My laughter sounded like somebody else's at first, then like mine. Friday, the Standard Health Director emailed asking for permission to use my footage and documents internally. "Yes," I wrote, and attached a notarized statement I'd gotten at a UPS store because I'd learned that certain kinds of paper make people behave. Saturday morning brought Drew's text barrage, 10 messages alternating between threats and pathetic tenderness. "You're ruining my career." "You didn't even ask me why." "We are family, Ari." "You think that place cares about you?" "I did this for you. You're terrible with money." The last one. "Pal, stop this. I can fix it." He was wrong. I was stopping it. But not for a moment did I feel sorry. He had opened a door to a room labeled "Consequences," and I had simply walked him through it. The call came Monday at 4:17 p.m. "Ms. Reyes, this is the director again. We completed our initial review." There was a tone to her voice, like the moment a judge's gavel is just above the block. "We have placed Mr. Tanner on administrative leave, effective immediately, pending further investigation. We will be meeting with him tomorrow. We may need to contact local authorities depending on his statements." When I hung up, I put my face in my hands, not from grief, but relief, which can feel like crying if you've been holding your breath for too long. I walked to the window. The Atlanta sky had that bright winter blue that lets skyscrapers preen. Down on the street, a woman hustled 2 toddlers across against the flashing hand. The world's audacity to continue is a kind of mercy. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. Not yet. Because there's a difference between the machine chewing and the machine spitting out a result. There is always one more turning of the screw, one last test of whether you mean it. Mine arrived in the form of a charity gala. Chunk 2. Standard Health liked to prove their goodness in public. They were sponsoring a health equity gala at the Marriott Marquis, gullwing escalators with their own weather system, where executives would applaud slides about innovation, and someone would cry on stage about access to care in a way that made donors clap louder. Drew's team was supposed to staff a table. He had posted a picture of his suit with the caption, "Let's do some good." The gala was a week after his leave, and he was very much not invited, but he'd told his friends he'd smoothed it and would be back in the mix. When Maya showed me the post, we were eating Waffle House hash browns, smothered and covered, watching people at 2 a.m. do the choreography of late-night hunger. "He's going to crash it," she said. "He's going to crash it," I echoed, and felt the plan arrive like a click into place. Because all along, I'd kept one thing separate, a slim manila folder I labeled "For Public." The binder was for institutions that required documenting an earthquake. The folder was for a moment I could manufacture. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to direct. I bought a black dress at a consignment shop near North Avenue that made me look like I had always known my own mind. I borrowed a pair of heels from Maya that made me taller than the girl who'd started this story. I spent $10 on a ticket to the gala via a student discount link. Did they think students wouldn't bring trouble? And printed a small sticker with the word volunteer, because the difference between inside and outside, I'd learned, was solved by a rectangle and a stick-on label. The marquee lobby was a vertical canyon lit like a spaceship. I could smell expensive perfume and the rubber burn of escalators. At the registration table, I smiled and said, "I think I'm supposed to help with check-in?" The woman with the headset looked at my sticker, then at the line behind me. "We could use another hand," she said, harried. In 30 seconds, I was handing out badges to strangers, MDs and PhDs and VPs of things, feeling the way paper can knight you into spaces you're not supposed to be. At 7:10, the standard health table arrived like a flock, suits, crisp dresses, name tags with gold stripes that told you they had access to rooms where decisions disguised themselves as coffee. The director was there, the one who'd called me Ms. Reyes, her hair swept into a no-nonsense bun. She looked tired in the way only people who've had to explain integrity to adults look tired. At 7:22, Drew walked in. He always liked to arrive a little late. He wore a dark suit, a smile, and the unfamiliarity of someone who'd been on the outside for a week and didn't like the weather. He saw the table, slowed, then adjusted his smile and came toward me, not recognizing me behind the check-in desk for a fraction of a second. Then he did. "What are you doing here?" His voice dropped to a frequency you need training to detect. "Volunteering," I said brightly, sliding a badge toward a man named Ken, he/him. "You can't be here," he said, like he controlled the building. "I love how you always say things that aren't true," I said, not looking at him. He straightened, looked around, then leaned in. "You're done," he whispered. "You don't get to define me." "Don't I?" I said mildly, because sometimes the most devastating yes is a no in a nice dress. The director saw him then, and her expression performed a quick, precise sequence. Recognition, calculation, decision. She approached with a small, tight smile. "Mr. Tanner," she said, "you are not cleared to attend this event." "I'm here on my own time," he said. "I bought a ticket." "This is a standard health-sponsored event. You are on administrative leave." The director nodded subtly to a security guard who seemed to grow from the carpet. "This is ridiculous," Drew said, voice louder, theatrically aggrieved. "We can discuss this tomorrow," she said. "Please leave." "You're doing this because of her," he said, pointing at me, the gesture sloppy, public. Heads turned. Audiences will always form around an argument if you give them assent. I felt the hush open like a curtain. Most people would shrink. I'm not most people anymore. "Actually," I said, and reached under the table for the manila folder, "we're doing this because of you." I stepped out from behind the check-in table and onto the small stage area where a mic perched on a stand waiting for the MC. I didn't grab the mic. I didn't need to. I had something better. The screen behind me, cycling through logos and sponsor names on a loop like a prayer wheel. I pressed the button on the laptop at the AV desk, because all galas are powered by a student worker or a contractor who will let you touch things if you look like you know where you're going, and up came a slide I'd named Integrity Lives Here PDF. It was just one image, the standard Health Code of Conduct header, and under it, in a neat box, the clause about reporting personal wrongdoing or conflicts that compromise trust. No pictures, no drama, just a mirror. The room hushed. Drew sputtered. "You can't—" "This is a health equity gala," I said, looking out at faces that wanted a story they could applaud without getting stained. Equity is a nice word. It means, among other things, not using other people's lives as credit. It means integrity when no one is watching, but someone is always watching. I lifted the folder. Someone is always taking notes. Security arrived, gentle hands that know how to move people whose stories are ending. The director didn't look at me. She looked at Drew and said something I couldn't hear but could guess. Go. Drew leaned toward me as the guard guided him. You're going to regret this, he whispered. The kind of threat that has to borrow power. I already regret ever thinking you were family, I said. Not cruel, just true. He left, escorted, his suit too tight across his shoulders now, like integrity was something you had to earn to fit into. The room exhaled. The AV loop returned to Logos. The MC, game face on, took the mic and said, Let's give a round of applause for our sponsors, because his job was to resurrect normal. I left before dessert. The night air smelled like wet concrete. Across the street, the Hyatt's glass facade was a mirror to the lights, and I thought of the extra key line on the folio and the way the truth looks simple when someone else has done the work to render it. On the east side elevator down to street level, a woman said, Was that about that data company? I smiled a small private smile and said nothing. Days later, the call came. Ms. Reyes, the director said. Following our investigation, Mr. Tanner's employment has been terminated for violation of the Code of Conduct. We are cooperating with law enforcement as appropriate. We will be sending you a letter for your records. Her voice softened half a shade. Thank you for your courage and your documentation. I thanked her. After we hung up, I stared out at the parking lot behind our building, where a delivery truck was beeping as it backed into the loading zone, and felt, for the first time in weeks, the thick weight leave my chest. It wasn't joy. It was something quieter, something that sounded like the first few notes of the song you play to clean your apartment on a Sunday morning. The consequences continued downstream. Ethan's fraternity posted a chilly note about standards violations, and he resigned from leadership to focus on academics. Lumea Ventures didn't announce anything, because companies rarely do when they quietly decide someone is not going to represent them. But I heard from a friend who heard from a friend that his summer offer wasn't extended. He DM'd me a paragraph about how I'd embarrassed him. I didn't answer. Some messages are not invitations. They're warnings. Mom called me crying, apologizing for ever letting Drew into our paperwork, for not seeing him clearly. I told her it wasn't her fault, that predators often look like sons when they eat at your table. She laughed wetly, and then apologized for the metaphor, and we made tea in our separate kitchens and sipped together over the line. I did the administrative aftercare, monitored my credit, filed the credit dispute to erase the Klim account from my report, followed up on the police report. I kept every piece of paper, even when I wanted the whole archive gone. We need our own history sometimes, not to live in it, but to be able to say we survived it. And because I am my mother's daughter and my own woman, I built something else out of the mess. A small campus workshop called Receipts Protecting Your Paper, co-hosted by the Financial Aid Office. We taught freshmen to freeze their credit, to memorize their social like a prayer, but share it like gold, to check their mail and their assumptions. We showed them how to build a binder. I printed the workshop handout at my copy shop job and stapled them neatly, and seeing them in a stack felt like a ritual that made sense again. One afternoon, I got an email from an HR assistant at a different company, a competitor of Standard Health, asking for a reference for a Drew Tanner, listing my name as someone who had worked with him on a volunteer project. He had lied to add me as a reference. The audacity took my breath again, but only briefly. I wrote back, I did not work with Mr. Tanner. Please remove my name from your records. For background, see attached letter. The attachment was the Standard Health termination letter with sensitive details redacted and a short statement I'd notarized that summarized the facts without commentary. I don't know what happened after that. I didn't need to. I had stopped being a narrator of his story and returned to my own. Spring came to Atlanta like it always does, pollen on every car, a fake neon placed by nature, students sprawled on the campus green as if they weren't rolled over by deadlines and desire. I ran on the belt line, shoes slapping the path, and felt my lungs burn and then open like windows. I passed Ponce City Market and thought about Drew's leather bracelet and his sales voice, and how some people learn charisma and some people learn character. Only one holds up in an audit. Finals week, I stood in the campus library at 2 a.m., the place Ethan had claimed to live in, and looked down the rows of books that make a cathedral. I pulled a random volume and opened to a line about justice that seemed written just for me. It wasn't dramatic. It said that systems are made of people and paper, and that sometimes people are bad, but paper, laid end to end, can pull a straight line through a crooked mess. I put the book back and smiled into the quiet. On the night of my last exam, Maya and I walked to the varsity because it was awful and perfect, and we ate fries out of a red paper boat in the parking lot and watched the city breathe. "You're the scariest nice person I know," she said, her mouth shiny with salt. "I'm not scary," I said. "I'm thorough." We laughed and bumped shoulders. In August, I moved to a new apartment with better light and a mailbox inside the lobby, past a locked door. On my first morning there, I slid the Standard Health letter and the police report into a fireproof envelope and tucked it onto the top shelf of my closet. I didn't need to look at it every day, but I wanted to know that if the world tried to tell me I was overreacting or dramatic or crazy, I had a piece of paper that said I wasn't. I still see Drew's face sometimes when I pass a certain kind of suit. It doesn't scare me anymore. It just reminds me that charm without ethics is a costume that wears thin at the elbows. I still get the occasional DM asking if the drama is over, and I leave it unread, a ghost on my screen. I still walk past the Hyatt and catch a whiff of lobby scent and think of a key cut at 1:14 a.m., and I hope the girl in that room has learned, like me, to carry her own receipts. And on a quiet Sunday, when I was doing laundry and the dryer was humming like a cat, I found a Ziploc bag at the back of my sock drawer. Inside, the hoodie, clean as the day I sealed it. I took it out, held it, and then, without ceremony, dropped it into the donation bin in our lobby. Objects don't have power unless you keep lending it to them. I had loaned enough of myself to people who hadn't earned it. When my bank finally sent the letter confirming the Klim account was removed from my report, I read it standing at the counter, fingers smudged with tortilla chip grease. I held it up to the kitchen light and smiled at the stark bureaucratic poetry. This account has been determined to be fraudulent and has been removed. It was an unpretty sentence. It was the most beautiful thing I'd read that month. A week later, I got into an Uber headed north on 7585, the skyline sliding past like a mixtape of glass, and the driver had the radio low, a talk show about ethics in tech. "You study that stuff?" he asked after seeing my campus sticker. "I live it," I said, surprising both of us. He laughed and said he did too. We rode in companionable silence past the exit for the marquee, where a gala had pivoted to a different story for a minute because a girl with a binder pressed a button on a laptop. The city didn't care. It just breathed. That was okay. The point was never applause. The point was that I could see myself in a window again and recognize the girl looking back. And if I sometimes still touch the fireproof envelope in my closet before I go out the door, it's not because I'm afraid. It's because I earned it. The paper, the plan, the spine. I'm 22 now, and if a future boyfriend ever asks me what I bring to the table, I'll say, a chair of my own, a well-lit room, and the ability to read the fine print. If a stepbrother ever asks me for help with a form, I'll smile and tell him to hire a professional. And if anyone ever tries to make their problem look like my responsibility, I'll put down my coffee, open a fresh tab in a fresh binder, and begin to number the pages. Because this is my true story, told because silence protects the wrong people. Because I learned that revenge doesn't have to be a knife. It can be a highlighter, a camera with a reliable timestamp, an email sent at exactly 8:01 a.m. Because when my stepbrother used my name for fraud, I sent the evidence to his employer, and the thing about paper is that it weighs something, enough to tip a scale back to level, enough to let a girl walk out of a hotel lobby into the winter air, free. The end.